Hey, and welcome to another episode of Fast Forward, a podcast from QSR Magazine where we talk to the founders, innovators, and entrepreneurs behind some of the world's most exciting fast casual restaurant concepts. My name is Sam Oches. I am the editor of QSR and the editorial director of Food News Media. On today's episode, I'm sharing a conversation with Spencer Rubin, the founder and CEO of Melt Shop, a melted sandwich concept based out of New York City. Now, about 8 or 9 years ago, there was this movement in fast casual where several brands started popping up that were doing one item. They were really focused on sort of this one lane on their menu. And, that looked like, hot dogs or meatballs, donuts, a lot of brands trying to really focus the menu and then just thrive on doing that really, really well. Out of that season, several brands kind of popped up doing grilled cheese. And Melt Shop was one of those restaurants that came out of that era. They were a little ahead of the time in New York. In 2011, they launched several grilled cheese concepts, didn't exactly stick around. But what Melt Shop did so wisely was they really evolved over time and now really serve as this melted sandwich concept with a wide variety of menu items. They have chicken melts, they have burger melts, they have chicken tenders and salads and milkshakes. Really a lot of options that, as Spencer says in our conversation, fits a lot of need states for the customer, trying to be all things to all people in some ways, but really is more just trying to satisfy those needs of the consumer when and where they want them. Spencer started this restaurant when he was really young. He had the goal to open a restaurant by his 25th birthday, and sure enough, he opened Melt Shop, the first location, on his 25th birthday. So he was a young guy, but he connected with John Rigos and Andy Stern, who at the time were Five Guys franchisees in New York, but they partnered with Spencer. They created Aurify Brands, which has really become a restaurant incubator for several restaurant concepts, including 4 fast casuals: Melt Shop, Field's Good Chicken, Little Beat, and Make Sandwich. They also have Little Beat Table, so 5 total concepts. But Spencer and Melt Shop, this was the first one that they did under the Aurify banner. So Spencer really kind of came in with this idea and this passion for starting this grilled cheese concept. He paired that with John and Andy and their know-how and what became Aurify. They've built this company into around 20 locations today. They franchise. They see this as being really a national company, a national concept with legs to grow to hundreds of locations around the country. I sat down with Spencer in Chicago at the National Restaurant Association show to get the story of how this young guy started a restaurant company that has become so successful, and to talk about how he has evolved a grilled cheese concept into this melted sandwich brand that really is starting to take off and carve its own niche.
Well, I always wanted to be in the restaurant business. I think since I was like 8 years old, I was obsessed with food. Don't know how I kind of landed on that, but decided early on, restaurants for me. Did everything I could growing up to work in kitchens or restaurants in whatever capacity I could kind of get my hands on.
Yeah.
And started working illegally for a catering company in my hometown, like when I was like 12 and a half or 13. And fast forward a bunch of years, I decided when I was in hospitality school that I was really interested in the fast casual space, partially because it kind of combined my entrepreneurial spirit with really high quality, craveable food that was really approachable to the masses. Like I'm a pretty casual guy, but I like great food, and so fast casual really seemed like a space that I gravitated towards. So out of college, I worked for a restaurant development company, specifically to learn how to build restaurants from the ground up. Every person I ever spoke to, and when they asked me, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a restaurateur. They would always tell you, you're absolutely crazy. Like I think like 9 out of 10 restaurants fail, and
Right.
Don't do it, sort of thing. Which made me want to do it even more. And after doing some digging and like trying to understand like why those patterns existed, it became pretty clear that restaurants are very capital intensive, and a lot of restaurants fail because they just they're out of business before they even open their doors. They just overspend in the construction process. They don't have any working capital once they do finally get their project complete. And, it takes a little bit of time to ramp a new location, a new concept. And if you don't have the working capital to kind of get you through that, it's hard to really get something going. And so I thought learning about construction first, at least as my first professional job out of college, was an interesting place to start. Did that, was involved in about 50 different restaurant projects in some way, shape, or form. And although I didn't master restaurant construction, I certainly cut my teeth in that side of the business. And finally, when I felt like, I'd done enough construction for my liking, I started working on different ideas for an original concept with my partners that I have now. And the way we met, they were clients of mine. They're serial entrepreneurs, great guys. They were Five Guys franchisees in Manhattan. I was helping them build some of their restaurants. And along with my old boss, we would meet on a weekly basis and kind of throw around ideas for original concepts or talk about concepts that existed that we might be interested in franchising. And I was 23, 24 at the time. And the idea was I was going to run whatever it was, help, develop the concept, help, build it because I know how to do that, help get it off the ground and run the day to day. We actually started working on a donut concept, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
We worked on that for about 6 months. We had hired a consultant to help us.
You got pretty deep into that.
With the business. And I honestly didn't love donuts. I like donuts, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't feel like it had, 1,000 unit scale potential.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like something that drove frequency at the level that I think you need to have a really sustainable growing concept, right? And I'm sure there are some amazing donut concepts out there, so don't get me wrong. But I just I just wasn't that jazzed about it. And we had a concept. One of the ideas we had was for a grilled cheese concept, and I really gravitated towards that. I thought it had the most scale potential of the concepts we were talking about. I thought it had the least competition. So there was just like the most white space there, and the Better Burger movement at the time was, full steam ahead and crushing it. Pizza was always killing it, but was, you were seeing some new really popular and cool pizza concepts come out, right? And those are both like cheese and bread and protein and sauces, and it's like, all right, grilled cheese really kind of has all those similar qualities, but is a completely new space, but is something that's really approachable and familiar to a lot of people out there. So, why isn't there a concept that owns this space? And that's how Melt Shop was really born. And we had quickly we got a flyer in the mail for a piece of real estate in Midtown Manhattan. It was a 300 square foot kiosk. It was originally Moishi's Kosher Deli. Okay. And it was this vented kiosk. So it kind of had everything you needed from an infrastructure standpoint, but boy, was it run down. And we were like, that's the perfect place to test this thing. Let's just have at it. And so once that piece of that real estate flyer came through our inbox, I think within about 5.5 months, we went from just grilled cheese as an idea to a fully baked concept, built a restaurant, and opened our doors.
What was the response when you opened that first kiosk? I mean, was it from day one? Did you feel like there were lines out the door?
Literally from day one, there were lines out the door. We got a ton of press out of the gate from some really reputable local publications, the Times, the Journal. I don't know why we were kind of right at the beginning of this kind of single item boom. There were pudding places and popsicle places and all these specialty one-off concepts, and so the press really ate it up, and we were also, I'd say, the highest quality fast offering in our neighborhood in Midtown. And so people really just gravitated towards us from day one. And I remember we would open up at 11 and a line would start forming at 10, like those first few months on the job.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy time. I mean, we were figuring a lot of things out. We were laying foundation like every single day, just trying to figure out how to systematize to handle the volume that, we had hoped for, but was a little unexpected.
Oh,
we
sure,
we thought there would be more of a ramp.
It's a good problem to have, I guess.
Great problem, no question.
Yeah.
Certainly not complaining.
Yeah.
So it was an exciting time, a lot of fun, and it helped, really launch the brand and, get us to where we are today.
How did your construction experience play into the brand building part of that? I've never heard of anybody else in this industry who intentionally wanted to get into sort of in construction as an experience before they did sort of the entrepreneurial brand building part of it.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question. And, I remember it was my senior year of college and a lot of my friends were applying for different jobs, and there were the true restaurant folks that were like all in on hospitality, and they were going to like the Hillstones of the world and entering those training programs and Union Squares and all that jazz, right?
And you're a Cornell guy, right? You went to Cornell Hospitality, yeah.
And so there was, there were a lot of recruiters up there, and I had resumes out for those opportunities and got a few job offers for some reputable hospitality companies, but ultimately, I wanted something more entrepreneurial. Like, I was really eager to start or be involved in starting a business. But like, my goal was by the time I'm 25, I want to own my own business. We literally opened up Melt Shop on my 25th birthday.
Wow.
No joke.
Wow.
Like, it was like, I knew I wanted to go to Cornell when I was 8 years old for whatever reason. Like, I just set goals in my life to like hit certain milestones. And
yeah.
It's crazy when you do that. Like, and you work at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, things happen. So when I was graduating, I was trying to figure out, what's the path to get to that to starting that business around the time I'm 25, right? And I realized, like, all right, if I'm gonna go work for a hospitality company and like get into their management training program, that might be a great opportunity to like learn ops with some really experienced people, but nobody's learning how to build restaurants, and I can go do that, and then I could go find one of my friends who just went through one of these great training programs, and we could partner up and figure out how to launch something together because we'll have like both sides of the equation, right? That was like, my thinking.
Yeah.
To this day, I kind of wish I took a year and did one of those training programs because I learned a lot on the job. But I think it was a very valuable experience learning just like, what goes into building one of these things from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I really love like the development process, especially like designing a melt shop and now kind of like fine tuning, what the equipment package is like where are the efficiencies in our build out and prototype, so we can deliver a better return on investment for our franchisees and our partners, or where is there an opportunity to deliver a better experience for our employees, right? Like, how do we make our restaurant easier to run, but deliver the same, if not better, quality product, right?
Right.
Like, I love that side of the business.
Yeah. You mentioned your partners earlier, and you're talking about John and Andy at Aurify.
Yes.
And they were Five Guys franchisees,
Yes.
and then they developed Aurify as this, I guess would you call it an incubator of fast casual concepts, launched the Little Beat first, is that right?
Melt Shop's first.
Melt Shop was first, okay,
Yes.
and then Little Beat came after that, Field's Good Chicken after that, and then Make Sandwich after that.
Yes.
4 concepts total.
Yes, and Little Beat Table, 5.
Oh, and Little Beat Table, right. So what kind of benefit do you get out of that structure? And how did it, especially, John and Andy are veterans, and, they came from the franchising space, and they were Subway franchisees too.
Yep.
I imagine that's a pretty deep well of knowledge and resources to pull from. How did that help in sort of the launching of Melt Shop?
I think it's a couple things. One, they're just both great business minds, right? So, and I think coming from the tech world and being part of a tech incubator, right? They've like seen how so many businesses have gotten their start and evolved. They've it's just been very collaborative, working with them, trying to figure out, what the best thing to do for the business is today, what the best thing to do for the business for the next, 36 months, right? Just like strategically, how to get the brand and the business from where it is now to, the 100-store chain that we want to become in the next couple of years.
Right.
I think, just on the growth side of things, the economies of scale we see from a larger organization are great, right? Because you just get better purchasing power, and those basic, fundamental pieces of the business are a huge benefit. And I think the most interesting part about working at Aurify is the fact that we're working, across from all these different founders. So we're working next to people that are kind of going through similar things at the same time. And so there's a lot of learnings there, right? Because they're all kind of emerging concepts, right?
Yeah.
And working on one emerging concept alone versus like seeing 5 kind of working at the same time, you get the benefit of not doing all the trial and error on your own dime. Like if, say, Field is, launching his own native online ordering site, it's like, and he's like 6 months ahead of me, right? It's like, all right, what were the learnings there?
Right, yeah.
What would you do differently if you were to do this a second time around? What should we even do native right now, or should we wait another 6 months? And those are all just kind of like water cooler conversations that I don't think would exist in your typical organization, right?
Yeah.
So it's very hard for me to like quantify or say what the benefits have been, but I think just the fact that we're all in the same room and just like kind of casually talking about like the new initiatives we're working on, I think there's just so many learnings, and I think it's probably helped each brand dodge a lot of bullets, and so I think that's like the biggest benefit for sure.
Yeah. You opened the first one in the kiosk. How long until you opened a second one? I mean, was it right away you guys knew you had to look for another lease?
It was. We started looking for another lease about a year in.
Okay.
And I think it was like a year and a half.
So you took your time. I mean, that's a fair amount of patience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like a year. You know what I mean? Like it was
went fast.
Like I don't think I took a day off my first 6 months in the job. Like it was. Because I didn't go to that operational training program, there was a lot of learnings day one on how to like build the infrastructure and set up the business. So it was successful. I think I think you could debate whether a year and a half is long or short. I think today in today's, day and age, I guess it is a long time, but it certainly felt pretty fast.
Yeah. And what was the second location? What kind of a real estate was that?
So that was on 26th and 6th in Chelsea, like right off of, Broadway and 26th Street, which is now, an amazing fast casual strip there with, you got Dig In, Little Beat, Sweet Green, like
Murderer's Row.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You got Hill Country Chicken. You got Shake Shack. You like literally just keep going down. You got the prime rib sandwich at Italy, right?
Right.
It's just like there's a ton of stuff there, which is all awesome. And we were there before all those guys, right? Besides Hill Country, which really kind of I think made the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so we were early to the hood. We got a killer rent deal, and we liked the space because there was like this big outdoor patio, and our first location at 53rd and Lex was like this outdoor kiosk with this outdoor patio. So we're like, all right, let's like kind of like borrow some of the pieces of this first location, but we'll actually have a dining room this time. And so that was store number 2. And there were a lot of learnings there, and now we had a larger footprint to deal with. And
I imagine going from kiosk to sort of a more traditional footprint, I guess. I mean, did it feel like sort of two different businesses? I mean, did it feel like you had to have a different approach to how you ran that store?
Yeah, well, so we took a bit of a risk with store 2 in that our first location, our processing time was high. Like our ticket times were like 10 minutes. 10 to 12 minutes, right? And on a day when you really got backed up, it could be even longer than that. So we realized pretty quickly that in order for us to have the scale potential, like we really needed to work on our throughput times, because we didn't think that, you know, a 10, 12-minute check was going to set us up for success for, you know, national growth. And so we started working on testing like a bunch of different pieces of equipment, and came across this Electrolux panini press that I got like obsessed over. And I did a ton of R&D. I mean, I tested it like 15 times. You know, it wasn't like I just was like, all right, I want that, and like bought it. Like we really did a ton of tests, and still we didn't do enough tests. So we went from a flat top grill to like that kind of high tech panini press, and we opened our doors, and it was a train wreck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like it was impressively bad. It was brutal.
And customers, did they notice?
Oh, you couldn't not notice. Like it was like it was so chaotic.
A mess, yeah.
I mean, our first week in business, I mean, we did like double the volume of our kiosk in any week in business, and we had like 6 of these things, and they're crazy expensive, and they just like, not only could they were supposed to be like the fastest thing on the market, but not only could they not keep up with the volume, like the product quality was so inconsistent. Like these were supposed to be like these very tech-driven panini presses that, you know, were timed and had these like automatic hinges on them, and like you couldn't mess it up. And they couldn't have made a worse product at scale.
Yeah.
And so we realized we gave it about a month of like trying to sort it out, and we didn't get enough support from the manufacturer. It's like, you know, we were like the small guys, and they were not paying attention to us, and we just ripped them out. And went back to the griddles until we went back to the drawing board to try and figure out how to get our processing time down.
Okay.
So that was so to answer your question, right? It was challenging because we did try and change the operating model. We changed our, you know, our workhorse, like our main piece of equipment, and that set us back a bit when we first opened that location.
Man, customers are so fickle, and you know, it's especially in this day and age when competition is tight. They've got a lot of options.
Yep.
You've got Yelp and all these other ways that they can vent their opinion. I imagine something even seemingly small like that could have a huge impact on business, I imagine.
For sure. I mean, I guess it's 6 years later, right? So we're still open at that store. It still does well. We're comping up year over year there every year, right? So I think we've managed to figure it out, but some tough lessons learned, no question.
Yeah. At what point did you guys decide you wanted a franchise?
I knew pretty early. Like, I mean, when we originally started the concept, it was like, all right, this is meant to be, you know, a 500 unit chain plus, right? Like, I really believe this has national scale potential, and everyone I talk to seems to agree with me. And so the idea early was like, we want to scale this thing big, but you gotta walk before you crawl.
Yeah, for sure.
We were like, let's figure out like the concept for the first few years, then we'll decide like how we're gonna get there. And after a few years in business, it was kind of clear like this could be a really great franchise concept. John and Andy from Aurify, you know, they're Five Guys franchisees. Obviously, that's been an amazing story to watch. It's like, you know, we should try and do something like this. I mean, maybe we can't do it at the level that they have, but maybe we can, right? Like, why not shoot for the stars? So quickly, I thought that was going to be, you know, a great way to grow this thing and continue growing corporate stores. Like, we like operations. Like, we want to be in the operations business. We want to run our restaurants. Like, we don't want to be one of those franchisors who has 0 locations. Like, we want skin in the game for sure, and we want to feel the impact of our decisions and benefit from them, right? Because we believe in them,
right? Yeah.
So quickly we decided we want to franchise, but you know, we didn't. It took a while to like build the model to a place where like someone else could really run it as well as we can.
Yeah.
And so then we put a lot of time into like processes and systems and documentation and that sort of thing. And finally, when we felt like we were ready, we turned it on.
How many corporate did you open before you opened your first franchise location?
We had 8 open before we opened our first franchise.
Okay. And all 8 of those were primarily in the New York area, right?
Most of them were in New York. We had one in Minnesota at Mall of America, which was a bit of a stretch.
And you're operating that one?
Yep, still are. I was just there before the show.
Yeah.
And then we also we had a corporate store in King of Prussia Mall in Pennsylvania. We started rolling out some malls, and that was a great opportunity. And it's a killer regional mall. Oh my god! And we actually refranchised that. So that was actually our first franchise location. We sold that to our Pennsylvania franchisee.
So you got it up and running essentially for the franchisee.
We got it up and running. We ran it for about a year and a half, and we sold it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what have you learned, or what had you learned by the time you got to the franchising and, through all of the corporate stores? What had you learned? How had you evolved? Because, I imagine once you franchise, you can't really put the genie back in the bottle. It's hard to adapt the business at that point.
Yep.
Had you evolved to a point where you felt comfortable, now, we can go and do this?
Yeah, to back to like the throughput problem that I talked about earlier. Getting the mechanics of the kitchen like right and tight was like my number one priority. And so I literally like spoke to every major manufacturer in the country. I went to like the Middleby headquarters and tested all their ovens, and went to a bunch of other companies just to really try and figure out, what does our prototype need to look like to ensure we are delivering the highest quality, most consistent product possible. And melted sandwiches is a unbelievably tough product to make. I think people really underestimate how hard it is to make a grilled cheese at scale. I think it is harder than a pizza. It's harder than a burger. And that was my problem to solve. And so finally we started working on conveyor technology. Like we started testing conveyor technology because we saw a lot of pizza chains using it, and it's like, all right, they like cook dough and they melt cheese, right? But so like, why can't we figure out how to like create this like grilling sort of environment, but in that sort of precisely timed and temperature controlled environment? And that thesis played out well, right? Like we tested a bunch of different options. There were like infrared options, there were impingement options, there were like toaster options, and once we found like the right thing, we're like, wow, that's really it. Then we locked it in. We retrofitted our older stores from the griddles, and we haven't looked back. It's changed the way we produce our sandwiches, and we went from what was as high as like a 15-minute ticket at store one to now we range from like 4.5 to 5 minutes, right?
Wow.
So like it really transformed our operation, our brand, and we deliver the highest quality product we ever have.
Yeah. What do you guys feel is sort of the, like, I guess, brand foundation and sort of the brand image you guys are giving out? Do you want to be sort of this quick lunch? Do you want to be this kind of come in and stay a while, have a drink and a sandwich? What are you trying to shoot for in terms of like the customer experience that you guys are building? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think like we like hang our hat on play, right? And so from an experience standpoint, it's like we want to be what you want us to be for that moment in time, right? Which I know a lot of people try and avoid, right? But like we can be that quick lunch for you, or we can, fill that need for if, you just had a bad day, or you want to celebrate your birthday, or, you want to have a quick indulgence and, want to throw your headphones on and just crush a buffalo chicken melt, right?
Right.
Like we feel like we fit, we fill a lot of need states.
Yeah.
We're not some transactional like salad joint, right? We have salads, right, that are super craveable, right? They're like this healthy indulgence. They're not meant to be your one meal a day if you're fasting.
Yeah, sure. On a diet, yeah.
So but So we feel like there's something for everyone at Melt Shop, and we have order ahead technology. You can come in, pick up your sandwich, and be out of there in 60 seconds or less, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can be a quick pickup option if you want, but you can roll in with a family of 6 and sit down and have a meal. And if you're in our city stores, grab a beer and a Babe Rosé or and a milkshake for the kid, and also have a longer experience, right?
Yeah.
It's meant to be what you want it to be.
It's crazy how much. So you guys launched the first store 2012?
2011.
11. It's crazy to think how much this industry has changed since then,
It's
right?
nuts.
And so especially when you think, you're in the epicenter of the food world in New York, so you guys experience a lot of these changes first, and you get a lot of these new technologies first.
Yeah.
And certainly the New York consumer is going to be as picky as it comes, because they're sort of the trendsetters, I guess, to some degree.
Yeah.
So saying all that, in the process of the last 8 years, you had off-premises takeoff, mobile ordering, third-party delivery. How did all of those things affect the Melt Shop business? How did it sort of force you to evolve the brand as you went?
Great question, right? Because I think it's still something we're working through today, right? Things are still evolving quickly. I mean, just philosophically, I think recently, like on a personal level, I've decided to kind of like take a more patient approach to like how we look at the business from a technology standpoint, because there are a lot of shiny objects out there, right? And I think a lot of people jump really fast to like try the new thing, and like that takes a lot of bandwidth, like testing new technology or onboarding new technology. It's expensive, it can be a distraction, it may not benefit the business at all, right? And so like being super methodical and disciplined with how you're testing things, onboarding new things, I think is really important. And so there may be a lot of new things out there that could benefit the business, but like we need to prioritize, what we put our energy into. And so like we have our tech stack right now that we're pretty content with, and we don't want to add anything more in 2019, right?
Yeah.
Like we got enough on the plate. Let's keep chipping away, making everything that we have on the plate better, right?
Right.
And we can maybe look at some new stuff next year, right?
Yeah.
So I think just philosophically, like we've slowed down on, not like, I'm always like having calls and like demoing new things just so I understand what's out there, right? But I try to avoid letting it suck up too much of my time, right? Because if you're only focused on like the new shiny object, I think you can lose sight of what's most important, which is like the day-to-day operations of the business and making sure you're delivering what's best for your guests and your employees, right?
Yeah.
So over the last 8 years, I think like obviously like the delivery landscape's changed dramatically, and we tested a ton of things, and some worked well, some did not. I think at least in Manhattan, like delivery is table stakes. Like if you don't have it, like you're not gonna be able to play.
You won't have a lunch business to speak of, I think.
Yeah. So for a product like ours, we've had to innovate on our packaging and figure out how to hold things in the restaurant hot, the highest quality possible. We've adopted integration partners like Checkmate. So manual entry was a nightmare when we first started the business, and we were literally printing out every seamless order and punching it in the system, and there was tons of human error, and my cashiers felt like their fingers were going to fall off. So we've used technology to benefit the operation from that perspective. And like our back office, like management software is a big improvement from the old Excel spreadsheets. But I think it's hard to compete with like the big players, right? Like we're not Domino's, right? Like, and so our experience, although we think it's great, we still want to make it better. But so we use Level Up, we use Olo. And so we're continuously like refining the UX on those to deliver the best experience possible. So I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Absolutely. Well, and I imagine, this is all good stuff, right? I mean, like, people I think are frustrated at things like how much the third-party delivery services take off the top, all the various fees involved. There's a lot sort of complex about it, but at the same time, I mean, this is also helping you build your business and helping you reach probably a lot more new consumers in the process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I assume you guys look at this as a good thing, and you just kind of have to adapt to the new technologies as they come and trust that it's going to be a part of enhancing your experience, right?
Yeah. I mean, the delivery fees are definitely the most, the toughest pill to swallow, I would say, right? Like, it's great to have this like huge marketplace of, new guests that you might not otherwise have access to, right? So like there's definitely a benefit there. But that cost of doing business is obviously very expensive, and depending on, what percentage of your business that is, it can, potentially, obviously wreak a lot of havoc on your P&L.
Yeah.
So, we have mixed feelings about it, right? But I do think we as operators and the industry as operators will continue to figure out how to, make these things work for the business. I don't think anyone's really cracked the code yet, but it is a never-ending topic of conversation at every single gathering I've been to, and I do have to imagine the industry will figure it out.
Yeah.
I think it's just still in this kind of transitionary period.
Yeah.
But delivery is a key part of our business
For sure.
In our Manhattan portfolio especially.
What has been the biggest challenge for you to date? I mean, what's been the biggest struggle? What keeps you up at night?
Minimum wage increase is something I have no problem with minimum wage increase. Like, I want to pay our people more, right? But, the rate with which it's changed over the last few years has been definitely challenging to keep up with. And so, like, figuring out how to create a more efficient operating model is, like, what we've been focusing on. And, getting our team, the store-level team to buy into that change is a challenge, right? Like, there's always this healthy debate of, like, can we do this thing faster, or can we do this thing in a more efficient way? And it's not like we go in and just like slash labor and say, we expect you to do the same amount, you have the same exact amount of output, but only with half the number of labor hours, without changing the way we do something. Right now, what we're working on is figuring out how to like break our processes apart and put them back together so they take less time. So then we could say, all right, now take this many hours out of your schedule, not because you have to, but we've actually made this process easier and faster, so now we know the path to get there.
Right.
So that's what we're working on right now, and I don't say it necessarily keeps me up at night in a bad way, but it's like trying to run your business so differently to deliver a more profitable product at the end of the day is something we're constantly kind of, the puzzle we're trying to put together.
Yeah. I want to talk about New York and operating a fast casual in New York, something we were talking about earlier. It's a conversation I have with a lot of people, both in New York and out of New York, how difficult the market is. Of course, it is the top market in the country. People, I think, really get infatuated with operating a restaurant there because it's like if you can succeed there, they think that you can succeed anywhere. But it's been going through a pretty tough time recently. Some fast casuals there, closing up shop, and it's really a dog-eat-dog world, obviously, for the fast casual industry in particular. What is your thought on, what you've learned, starting up a fast casual business in New York City, and what the challenges are there, but I guess also how you can use that to your advantage as you guys grow outside the city?
Yeah, I think, New York is a crazy market, and I think, it's hard to open up in New York with just one location. Like, you need to build brand awareness to really make it in Manhattan most of the time, right? I'm not saying it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. There are plenty of places that open up and have, great success with single unit operations. But I think, building brand awareness in the market is key to success, and that takes time and capital and operating infrastructure, and I think it's getting more and more expensive to do that, right?
Yeah.
So to the tech conversation of being, methodical and disciplined with our decisions to like roll out new tech, I think you need to also, look at real estate the same way, right?
Yeah.
And, I think the same way you can chase shiny objects in the tech world to try and make the business more efficient, sometimes it ends up doing more harm than good, right? And so New York is, I think, a similar story for some people, right? I think it's like if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Actually, that's not true, right? Like you can make it in a lot of other places too, and you might actually have the same, if not more, volume, with a fraction of the occupancy cost, right? And so, like that sounds far more interesting to me than dealing with the con heads of the world to get your gas turned on in Manhattan, because that is a quick way to put you out of business if you're not careful. So I think Manhattan is definitely a great market if you can figure it out. And some of the the AUVs you hear from some concepts are absolutely insane, right? So there's opportunity, no question, and there's built a lot of mouths to feed there. But it's a tricky beast, so it's like buyer beware.
It's going to almost feel simple to run restaurants in other cities compared to New York. I mean, it must be a relief to go into with such less occupancy cost.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's nice to go into another market and be, one of the highest, if not, highest paying employer. And there's definitely some other. We look at things differently when we step into other markets because we were born here.
So talking about growth, I think it was last year you guys said you're going for 100 locations. You are doing this big franchise push.
Yep.
How do you plan to get there? What kind of a franchisee are you looking to partner with? What kind of markets are you looking at?
Yeah, sure. So we're looking to continue to grow in the Northeast. We have our fourth franchisee that we just signed in Orlando. So we're starting to develop in Florida. And we're looking for multi-unit operators that have infrastructure and experience. And we're looking for people that really believe in the brand and align with our values and really just love our product, right? And are as passionate about it as we are. So right now we're developing stores in the Pennsylvania area. We're developing in Orlando and in Southern Florida. We have a number of airport deals under development, which we're really excited about. And we're continuing to look for great operating partners. And I think we've been fortunate that we've signed the 4 franchisees and licensees that we've signed all have a lot of restaurants that they operate now, which I think is a great sign that we're signing on the right people. And we want to continue down that path.
The non-traditional part of that is really interesting because, I mean, if you can have a flexible model where you can go into airports, you can go into malls, now food halls are big everywhere. I mean, it seems like that sort of feels like the sky's the limit because some concepts are so constrained by their footprint and by that model, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're working on like 4 key prototypes right now. So we have our standard food court. We have our kind of larger inline, city center type locations. So, that's what you see in Manhattan. That's what we're developing in some high traffic strip centers in Pennsylvania. And then we're working on these kiosks for non-traditional. And so those would be these kind of like standalone kiosks that would be unvented, which, and then an outdoor kind of pod that you could kind of pop up, whether it be at like a NASCAR race, or you could pop it up at the mouth of 100,000 student football stadium. So long story short, the non-traditional opportunities are where we're really starting to double down, and I think our product is just perfect for those environments. Like we do a ton of music festivals. We do the U.S. Open every year. I mean, people go absolutely crazy for melt shop in these moments.
It's comfort food. It's a handheld. It's easy.
It's cool. It's craveable. You name it, right? So but those are temporary moments, we're trying to now take those learnings and find places that have that kind of fanfare, but more full time, right? So those 4 prototypes we're kind of rolling some of that out now. We're excited to see, the results of that.
Is it? I mean, it seems like it's a tough competitive environment, of course, everywhere across the country when you're looking for real estate. Certainly just in terms of doing business, there's a lot of sandwich concepts out there. What do you see in terms of like the headwinds when it comes to competition and how you can kind of navigate some of that as you grow?
Yeah, I think conceptually, like from just a straight real estate perspective, I think one of the strategic advantages that we have is like landlords don't view us as competitive to burgers, to pizza, to chicken places, right? So like we really own our category, and so that gives us a lot of opportunity from a landlord perspective. Like they like our concept because they view us, they believe that we don't compete with their other concepts.
Even different than subs, right? I mean, it's
exactly,
like,
even
so though it's a sandwich, it's not a sub.
It's not like we're like Firehouse Subs going next to, Jersey Mike's or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I think that gives us, at least a lot of opportunities to look at, right?
Yeah.
Now, deciding where we want to plant the concept's a different story. And, I think because we cast a wide net and because we do have a fried chicken melt and we do have a burger melt and we do have some products that although are very differentiated in how we make them, may compete to a degree with some other concepts. We try to go in locations where there's clustering, but not like overly competitive, right? And I think to the New York conversation, I think that's why a lot of people might want to avoid New York. But you have to pick and choose wisely. I mean, even like in our food court. In our mall strategy right now, we're very selective now with the food courts that we go into, and we look at like the total sales per square foot of the mall, but it's also like literally how many concepts are in the food court, right? Are there 20 or are there 5, right? Like if there are 5 and the same number of mouths to feed, all right, we can win there, right? But if there are 25, maybe we stay away from that.
Yeah. Last question for you, Spencer. When you think about all that you have learned over these last 8 years, what would your advice be to young entrepreneurs getting into the food service space? I mean, you were a young guy when you launched this concept, and you've really grown up a lot with it. And there's a lot of other young folks out there who want to do the same. What's your main piece of advice to them if they're getting into that journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different time. Like I will say that, right? I think it's a lot harder to start a concept now than it was when I was doing it, only because there's a lot more competition right now, it feels like. So I think being selective of the market you start in is key, right? And to the way I started my career, right? Like the whole point of me getting into construction was to figure out how to like step into restaurants with the lowest entry point possible. Try and be like, super tight with a dollar, keep your overhead low, right? Give yourself as much runway as possible to figure things out, because what you put out to the market day one is not going to be what the end product ultimately becomes. There's a lot of trial and error there, and you need runway to figure those things out, right? So build yourself runway, I guess, is like the best piece of advice I could give anyone. Make sure you have enough working capital to get you through the first year of your business so you can figure things out. And don't give up, right? Like it takes time and effort, and things come when you put a lot of time and effort into something. So that would be my advice.
That's good. Well, Spencer, appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Well, there you go. That's my conversation with Spencer Rubin, the founder and CEO of Melt Shop. Of course, as always, you can go to qsrmagazine.com to access all of the news and insights you need for the QSR and fast casual restaurant industries. Go to qsrmagazine.com/podcast for the full Fast Forward archive. Or, of course, you can go subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, rate this podcast or leave us feedback. We love to hear more from you. You can email me at sam@qsrmagazine.com. That's all for today. We'll talk to you again next time.